and welcome to the Roar Rundown Sports Podcast. Haven't seen you guys in a week, but it is unlucky number 13, and we're back. I'm Chris Gay, joined by Zach Cloud and Weston Bailey, and we don't have a lot of stuff to talk about in Ouachita sports. Those that are familiar with college athletics know that finals week is coming up in colleges all across the nation. So that means that sports are kind of dialing down. Football season's over for most schools, and now we're getting into basketball season. Volleyball's over for a lot of people as well as soccer. But some other sports will be getting going, come January. So we don't have much going on for the rest of November, and obviously not much going on in December because of finals and, of course, Christmas breaks. But anyway, the week before Thanksgiving, which we just got back from, and before we get into business, how was your Thanksgiving break, guys?
Oh, it was awesome. It was so good. I live pretty far away, so it was good just kind of hitting the reset button, going home, getting a break from cafeteria food and Chick-fil-A, and really just, now it's time to lock in for 2.5 weeks, like you said. We're getting ready for finals.
Yep, got to lock in.
Yeah, lots of home-cooked meals is definitely really nice, especially considering this year we got a full week off for Thanksgiving break. I really like that a lot. And compared to the 3 days that we usually get, because then you get the 5 days and connect the 2 weekends, and it's like a whole big vacation. So I really like that part of our break.
Yep, I ate a lot this week. I know I ate good for Thanksgiving, let's just say that. But anyway, so we'll go ahead and get into some of the business, and then we'll talk about some other things, not relating necessarily to Ouachita sports, but regardless, we'll get into some other stuff as well. So the week before Thanksgiving, there were a lot of games, a lot of matches going on, trying to finish up the schedule before you head into Thanksgiving break and then before finals. So wrestling, they lost their November 15th matchup to Ozarks 15-27 at home. Also that day, women's basketball, they played Mississippi College and beat them 90-38. That was a fantastic game. Ouachita looked so much better than they did against Champion Christian, even though that Mississippi College is a Division II school from a pretty solid conference. So they did very well. The next day, Ouachita men's basketball, they played as well. They played, now I kept saying it wrong on the broadcast, but it's Ecclesia College. They beat them 103-73 at home, and of course that was the season opener not the season opener, the home opener for men's basketball, and what a performance. Obviously, Ecclesia still put up 73, so they couldn't stop hitting, but Ouachita three-point shooting was just red hot. Got to see a lot of great players in that game, have a lot of great games. So, but also that day, something not as great was Ouachita volleyball. They did go into the first round of the Great American Conference tournament, which was already kind of difficult. They took about as difficult of a road to the tournament as you could possibly imagine. They started off and, when it comes to these conference tournaments, they don't really consider your overall schedule or your overall record for seeding and stuff. They mostly just consider your conference record, but they started off the season 3-6 in GAC play, and then they hit their stride, and the team that they hit their stride against was Oklahoma Baptist, upset them, and, they were able to sneak their way into the tournament. Well, they were coming in as an 8 seed or 7 seed, 6 seed, something like that, a real low seed, and they were going to play Oklahoma Baptist, who ended up winning out the conference in the first round. And unfortunately, Ouachita lost in 3 sets. Oklahoma Baptist got their revenge after that upset early on in the season. So Oklahoma Baptist ended up winning out the GAC. And now they are in the tournament, but they made the tournament as a low seed, as a number 8 seed, and they're going to be playing number 1 Concordia St. Paul in the first round. That's going to happen, I think, on the 30th. So, even though Oklahoma Baptist definitely had, Ouachita's number, got the win, still got to kind of root for them. Another team that we'll be keeping an eye on in the NCAA tournament is Harding in football. For those of you that remember, we not so fondly remember, they beat us. Harding did beat us, but Henderson State beat us on Battle of the Ravine, so that kind of knocked us out of contention for the NCAA tournament. And, of course, Harding snuck in. They didn't make it very far, but Harding they had a bye in the first round, and they met Central Missouri in the second round, who had beaten Henderson State in the first round. And Central Missouri, a very, very good team. That was a heck of a game. I encourage you to go find highlights of this game or the full game broadcast or read about it or whatever. But basically, I think the final score, I think, was 35-34. And what happened was Central Missouri scored a late game touchdown, and they needed an extra point to tie the game at 35. And they tried it, but Harding, I've always noticed that Harding has a very good special teams group, and I know last year when they came to Arkadelphia, and I had to do some research for our pregame show before that game, and they were one of the leaders in the country in extra point and field goal blocks. So they were pretty good at that last year, but they showed again why they were good at it this season. So they blocked Central Missouri's extra point and ended up winning the game. So they will be moving on to Grand Valley State, and I think that's going to be a little tougher of a competitor than Central Missouri. Grand Valley State's one of the best teams in Division II. Have been for some time. So I don't know if Harding's going to get that win. And though they are a GAC competitor, sometimes you got to root for people in your own league. Personally, I'm going Grand Valley State in this one. But anyway, best of luck to Harding, but also best of luck to Grand Valley State. So anyway, I actually still staying on the subject of the NCAA tournament. Women's soccer lost in the first round after winning out the GAC. They lost in the first round to number 1 seed Washburn, and I watched that game, and that was a heartbreaker because Ouachita was playing such good defense all game long and went into extra periods, and Washburn just took advantage of. I think Ouachita got tired towards the end. I think they had a couple defensive breakdowns, and I know I never competed in high school athletics, but I know you guys did, and so I imagine that you guys probably have had experience playing where you're playing well all game long, and then just a couple bad plays just cause you to lose or something like that. So.
Absolutely, and what a game from our women's soccer team. To go up against the number 1 seed and go into extra period and only lose the game 1-0. That just shows how hot this team was and how good they really are. And I think they're going to continue to. Obviously, you got to take a reset, right? Because that is definitely a stinger when you were this close to moving on. But this team has a bright future, and they're obviously being coached extremely well. And I think they're going to have a lot of success moving forward.
Yep, Coach of the Year in the Great American Conference, and they are losing a lot of key players that are seniors or grad students. But as we saw after the conclusion of the conference semis, they had, I think, 10 players that were named to all GAC teams, and that was all the way from grad students to true freshmen. So. Definitely the future is very bright. Now, OBU Wrestling on November 18th, they competed at the Lindenwood Open, and one of the key or the notable names from this tournament for Ouachita was Jimmy Anderson. He was the runner-up in the freshman and sophomore bracket, but it's interesting because in this Open, Oklahoma State was also at this Open, and they're one of the top wrestling teams in the country, and Ouachita held their own. So that's definitely, something to look fondly upon. Now, the same day, Ouachita men's basketball, they would lose another game, and I think up at this point they're 1-3, and so they lost at Delta State 68-85. But let's talk about more of this past week. So while we were all off on either vacation or visiting with family, both men's and women's basketball at least had to stay part of the time still here in the Delph to play some matchups. So Ouachita had an exhibition match, actually their first exhibition match of the season versus John Melvin University, and that was, of course, here at home where Ouachita did come away with the 115-54 win on this past Tuesday. Now, of course, it's exhibition, so none of the stats from this game count. All that matters is the game experience. You're getting reps, and you're staying in shape considering this was the only game they played this past week, and you get to work on some things. So just briefly, we'll go over those stats. And again, these, none of the player stats will count to their season totals, but I think it's still important to at least acknowledge the games that some of these guys had, especially Gavin Snyder, who was sort of flirting with a triple-double. He's a true freshman out of Central High School, and he had 17 points, 7 rebounds, and 7 assists. He's a guy that has had I think he scored his first points against Ecclesia, and he looked pretty good in that game. So I imagine he'll get some more playing time as the season goes on. Kobe Dunlap had 14 points, hit 4 3-pointers. Tyler Haynes only missed 1 shot, also had 12 points. Reggie Martin had 11, and so did Williams Dunn and Hamilton Ham. Rollin Belton had 10 points, and actually, if this was a real game, that would be his college career high. Former player at Marist College and starting center now with Ouachita. So just something interesting I noticed. MJ Leslie had 9 points. Taryn Williams had 8 points and 7 rebounds. Emery Knox had 6 points. Ryan Harris had 6. And then J.C. Phillip did not score, but he did have 7 rebounds. Now, women's basketball, they played 2 games this week. Neither were exhibition, both against very good teams. So women's basketball, they did lose 60-86 to Pitt State at home, also on Tuesday. And guys, just briefly looking at the stats, it's glaring why we lost, and it was the offense.
Yeah, when you just look at the numbers, we were only shooting 26% from the field, and from the three-point line, we were only shooting 19%. So it's definitely going to be really hard to win a game when your offense is struggling like that. But that's one of the things that comes with basketball. You have off nights and you have on nights. So hopefully later on in the week or next week, we'll be able to bounce back and account for some of our woes on offense and have a really nice game. But we also, from the line, we shot 71%, but we allowed ourselves to also get out-rebounded, which if you're talking about basketball, when you get to the college level, it gets really physical, and when you're playing in those physical games, being able to rebound the ball is going to be a big difference. And so winning the battle on the boards is always – it doesn't determine the win or the loss, but it definitely helps you a lot. And we got out-rebounded 50-40. Some of our girls that kind of led us in the game, Lainey Mears, she had 16 points off of 6 made shots, and she also had 4 steals, so she showed up on both ends of the court for us. Audrey Winfrey, she had 10 points and 5 rebounds. What's impressive about that is she had 4 offensive rebounds. It's a lot harder to get an offensive rebound than a defensive rebound. So the fact that she's able to do that looks very promising for her. Heidi Robinson had 8 points and 4 rebounds. Samantha Watson, she had 6 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists. And Grayson Fairless, she had 5 points and 10 rebounds. So, even though the game didn't come out in our favor and we have lots of room to improve, some of our girls still played really well, and we're looking forward to see what they can do in the future.
Well, we didn't make a lot of improvements the next game, which was this past Saturday. Now, Ouachita did lose by just 7, 47-54 against UT Tyler, and that was at Tyler. And Weston, I know the number that I see right away is the free throw percentage got better. I mean, he jumped from 71% to 85%, but not all of our other numbers improved.
You're exactly right, and it is a great improvement, the 85% from the free throw line. I mean, that'll get it done. Our offense just needs to kind of put it together. We played a lot better defense this game, only allowing 54 points compared to 86. I mean, that was obviously a defensive improvement, and I just think it's early in the season. Shooting is going to come for these girls, and they're going to figure it out as long as they can continue to be consistent on defense. I think the offense is going to come, and they'll turn it around pretty quickly.
Well, one player that jumps out right away to me is Joey Babel. She was primarily just a backup last season, backup point guard for Ouachita, but she came in off the bench in this game, had 13 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, was a bit of a spark plug, especially since our starters really did not have the best game. And then also Michael Russell. She's a true freshman from Sunnyvale, Texas, and actually was a McDonald's All-American nominee, but she had 5 points and a block. That's not big numbers, but she did so in only 4 minutes of playing time. So, and she's playing in, she's playing point guard, and she's playing in a guard room that's kind of deep. So, the fact that she was able to make a pretty big impact in such a short amount of time, that's pretty impactful. So now onto the Tiger Prowl preview. So this week, there's not a lot going on because we have finals coming up and Christmas break right after. So the athletics calendar really kind of slim at this point. But this Thursday, both women's and men's basketball, they are hosting their first conference game of the season versus Harding. And, of course, that will be Thursday. The women will play at 5:30, and then the men will play at 7:30. And, of course, we will have that broadcast this Thursday. OBU Wrestling, they will travel to Springfield, Missouri to compete in the Drury Open on Saturday. I always mispronounce that university's name.
Tough word.
Yeah, it is tough. OBU men's and women's swim and dive, they will compete against Truman State on Saturday. And then also on Saturday, men's and women's basketball will have their second conference game against Arkansas Tech in their GAC road opener, I guess if you want to call it like that. The women will play Arkansas Tech at 1, and then the men will play at 3. Now, going into our GAC Overachiever segment, the NFL is the only league that I have seen that has a lot of former GAC alums that have really made impacts. And one guy that I've mentioned just about every week is Tanner Hudson. He's a former Southern Arkansas tight end who spent a lot of time this season back and forth on the Bengals practice squad and their active roster. Well, he's since kind of made his name in the tight end room for the Bengals, and so he's gotten a lot of playing time. Their Thursday game against Baltimore, they did lose. Of course, the Bengals are in kind of a 3-game losing streak, but he had a solid game. He had 4 catches for 49 yards, caught all of his targets. And then in this last loss versus Pittsburgh, did not come away with 1 target, but still had 4 catches for 18 yards. And those aren't massive numbers, but this is a guy that was an undrafted player out of Division II Southern Arkansas, coming out of Magnolia, Arkansas. Not expected to be a big, an impactful player in any, sort of situation. And he's really played a lot. This is, I think, his 4th season, or maybe 5th season of NFL experience, and he's done pretty well. He's got 193 receiving yards on the season, which I believe is a career high. So, and another guy that I recently noticed. So Trinity Benson, former East Central wide receiver, he recently was cut from the Cleveland Browns practice squad because they had signed Joe Flacco. And if you keep up with the NFL, everybody knows that Deshaun Watson's out for the season, and they decided to bring in a veteran, and that veteran being Joe Flacco. If you don't know that, if you recognize that name, he was a pretty good quarterback with the Ravens in the mid 2000s. And then David Moore, another East Central wide receiver, former wide receiver. He has kind of played a lot in his NFL career. I say a lot. He's played about 6 seasons in his NFL career. He's definitely made some plays, especially spending time with Seattle, but he was recently elevated to the active roster for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He did play this last week. He didn't record any stats, but he at least made it on the field, so congrats to him. All right, so we're going to stay with football because throughout college football, a lot went on this past weekend, just this weekend alone. Of course, everybody knows Texas A&M fired their head coach, Jimbo Fisher, and they recently just made the new hire. They hired Mike Elko, the former Duke football coach. Of course, Duke had a pretty good football season this year. What do y'all think of that hire? Because I kind of thought it was an interesting one.
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting hire. I think it's a great opportunity for their new coach, but he showed he knows how to win. Although given Duke does not play in as hard of a conference as A&M does, in the SEC. But it's interesting to see what will happen. You bring him into a team that's got a lot of talent, a lot of potential to have a good season. So it's kind of exciting to see what he can do with his new squad of players and see if he can carry his wins into the SEC.
I think A&M right now, and coming from a Texas fan, try not to be biased, but I think A&M right now, it's kind of in a spot that Texas was in a few years ago. You're a huge, notable Power 5 program. The expectations are through the roof. And Texas, was just going through coaches. Coach after coach after coach. But in the last 5 and 7 years, Tom Herman, Charlie Strong, etc., until we finally got our guy Steve Sarkisian. I'm not sold that this was the right hire for A&M, but obviously a change had to be made. And I think that with the SEC being the way, I think the SEC is going to be even stronger next year with Texas and Oklahoma joining. It's going to be, I think, a tough first year for him. But if he's the guy to turn it around, then more power to him. Obviously he had the right resume they were looking for, whether that is more offensive firepower from a more offensive-sided coach. But I don't know. I've seen a lot of things going on with A&M about some of their stars. Former 5-star recruit Evan Stewart, who's a true freshman, is thinking about entering the transfer portal, didn't travel with them to LSU this past weekend. So I think things are a little shaky over there in College Station right now, but hopefully they all settle down until Texas plays them and we beat them.
Well, there's no doubt about things being shaky. I was a little confused because I was thinking, now, first of all, that Texas A&M job, that's not necessarily a job that I think people are lining up for. Obviously, people want to make Jimbo Fisher money, but they know that Texas A&M kind of learned the hard lesson. We're not going to pay anybody $75 million for 6 years anymore. We're not, because Mike Elko, I don't know much about him, but I just know that his resume does not match up to Jimbo's. And Jimbo did a decent job at A&M. When you look at his season-by-season totals, no, he didn't go to the playoffs, but they were ranked year after year. They went to bowl games. He brought in the best recruiting class of all time in 2022. He just couldn't do what he was expected. And, of course, A&M, I don't think any school should ever do this ever, but they gave him that plaque that said, this is when, we'll fill it out whenever you win a championship. You should always expect to win a championship, but you're automatically placing so much pressure on them, with that sort of type of statement. But I think that, I don't know if y'all have seen, but they recently announced how much Elko's going to get paid. So it's a 6-year contract. He's getting paid $7 million over those 6 years. Very different contract. That's still a lot of money if you think about it. Look, being a college coach has got to be in a Power 5 conference, has to be one of the best jobs ever, because Jimbo Fisher got fired, and he's going to be he's still getting that $75 million total.
That's what I was going to say is, imagine you're Jimbo Fisher and you're making 3 times the amount as the new coach, and you're not the coach anymore. You're getting paid 3 times the amount of money Just sit on your couch. Now, I'm sure Jimbo will land another job if he wishes to continue coaching. I mean, the guy's a coaching legend. Didn't work out in AM, whatever. But, I mean, that's absurd to me.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not saying being a college football coach is an easy job, but we've seen on numerous occasions, and us Razorback fans know about Chad Morris. Yeah. He didn't necessarily have like a long history of success, but because he had little moments of success, like he coached Deshaun Watson at Clemson, he coached Kelly Bryant at Clemson, and we were hoping that maybe he could get him as a transfer. That didn't happen. And then he also had a little bit of success at SMU, and so we kind of based it off that, and he still made $10 million and didn't coach a full 2 seasons. And, of course, Razorback fans are still bitter about that, but he didn't do, like, a lot. He just did decently well as an offensive coordinator, as a quarterback's coach. But Jimbo, he has actually done well. Of course, he was a great coach at Florida State. But when you look at anybody else that would have been available for the job, there wasn't anybody that had that sort of track record that he did, like maybe Dabo Swinney. I mean, he's got a national championship under his belt. But Kirby Smart and Nick Saban aren't going anywhere. And I'm trying to think who was also the most recently to win a championship. I mean, LSU, but Ed Orgeron's not getting hired, I don't think, as a head coach of a big program anytime soon. So I just don't know who else they would have gone, and I'm guessing, this guy's not going to make Jimbo money, so we're not going to pay him this, but it also means he doesn't have as much pressure because he's coming in, and I don't know what type of recruiting, because, Jimbo was a great recruiter. I mean, he brought in a lot of great guys, and Elko did a good job bringing in recruits to Duke. That's hard enough as it is, and to also win with those guys at Duke. But I don't know. I think it's interesting, but we could talk about this all day. But
seriously,
really. But also, I'm curious. So I know Quinn Ewers planning on coming back to Texas.
That's
the assumption.
What all reports. I actually just saw like an interview with him, leading up to the Big 12 championship, right. And someone asked him, what is going into your decision whether you go into the NFL or announce you're going to return. And he said, "Man, I'm just trying to win the Big 12 championship. If you focus on what's ahead of you, you're going to miss what's right in front of you." So, yeah. I don't know. That to me kind of sounded like maybe the NFL is more in play than we might think. But like you said, supposedly he's coming back.
Well, I think when I had heard that he was thinking about staying, that was when Caleb Williams was still like on top of the world, and he's kind of dropped off a little bit and hasn't quite had the same traction. I think he's still the best quarterback in the country, Caleb Williams. I mean, and he's still, if he, ultimately decides he wants to be in the NFL, I think he could still be the first pick. But, yeah. Mm-hmm. But I was thinking that because maybe that's why Ewers is kind of evaluating his options, but it's still a very quarterback-deep draft class because you got Bo Nix, Michael Penix,
DJ McCarthy,
Jaden Daniels.
Yep.
So there's a lot of great quarterbacks.
Which, I think it'd be smart. NIL money has completely changed the way that people look at the draft now, right? Because Quinn Ewers can make the same amount of money next year playing at Texas as he would on his rookie contract for any NFL team, right? I think that if you're just looking at a piece of paper, next year Quinn Ewers would be projected the best quarterback in college football with all these heavyweights leaving with Drake May, Caleb Williams. But to go to kind of Caleb Williams, like you said, at the beginning of the year, I'm like a big NFL draft guru. It was Caleb Williams and then everybody else under him. Mm-hmm. And now teams are looking at Drake May kind of the same way they are Caleb Williams. There's kind of a big case for Drake May going at the number one. I still think Caleb Williams should be the consensus number one pick for whoever needs a quarterback. But, yeah, it's been a lot of quarterbacks this year in college football have kind of established themselves, like Michael Penix, Bo Nix, guys coming out of nowhere having Heisman seasons, making a strong case for themselves to go in the first round.
Well, kind of speaking about Michael Penix, he came from Indiana. Mm-hmm. And he was good like in that 2020 season where And us Razorback fans, that was, the first Pittman season, and that was actually a good season. We only won 3 games, but they were against 3 SEC schools. And
succeeded the Morris era, his first season.
Yeah, exactly. He got us when we were at our lowest and brought us up. And
gave us some hope.
Yeah, the hope has kind of died down a bit. But it's definitely, I think, still a little bit higher than when Morris was there. Anyway, Indiana just fired their coach. For the life of me, I don't remember his name. But he was on a 7-year deal, and I think it was because Indiana did really well in 2020 with Michael Penix at the helm. The next year they didn't do so well, so he transferred out, and they just didn't do anything else. And they fired their coach, and I heard that John Gruden is in the mix.
Really?
Yep. And I was going to ask y'all, what do you? I mean, I know y'all know who John Gruden is, and if you don't know who John Gruden is, he won a Super Bowl as the head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the early 2000s, and is I guess you could call him a legendary coach for the Raiders.
Well known. Yeah.
Very well known.
Yeah.
Not just for being John Gruden, basically. But that's as far as I know, that was a rumor. But of course, rumors will always just be taken out of proportion.
Mm-hmm.
So, if that was a hire, what do you think of it?
I think it'd be a great hire. Honestly, I think, like how you just said, when you think of Gruden, you think of well-known. When I think of Indiana football, I do not think of well-known. So I think you'd be bringing a spark to your program. I think any college football team would be smart to at least give them a chance. I know Houston, who's in the Big 12, just fired their head coach. I mean, there's a lot of good jobs, Power 5 jobs that are open right now. But to really emphasize on Gruden, I think it would be a good hire. College football and the recruitment process for that is completely different than leading an NFL team. And we've seen guys actually struggle. Nick Saban had a little short tenure in the NFL, and it went terribly. And I think we could all agree the best college football coach of all time.
Yeah.
It would definitely be a change for Gruden, but I'm sure the guy would love to have an opportunity.
Well, and now another job that opened up is Oregon State's job. Now, I don't know if y'all saw the Oregon State coach left Oregon State to go be Michigan State's head coach.
Interesting.
It is interesting, but it makes sense because, Oregon State, the Pac-12, this was their last year. Yep. It's hard to believe the Pac-12 will be no more. And the only 2 teams that did not find another place in another Power 5 conference was Oregon State and Washington State. They're the only ones that were standing pat. And, of course, they weren't exactly finding a lot of suitors, even though Oregon State has been really good at football the last few years. Washington State was good at the beginning of the season, then just kind of fizzled out. But it makes sense. He got out while he had a chance to stay in the Power 5 conversation, even though he's going to Michigan State, who has had its moments, but it's not been great. I mean, it's overshadowed by in-state school Michigan and, of course, Ohio State and Penn State, and Iowa's in that conference. Yeah, it's in the Big Ten. Yeah. So
playing in the championship.
Right. So it definitely has a lot of competition in that conference alone. So, but he's going there regardless. He's still going to be in Power 5 because Oregon State's probably going to be Mountain West.
I was going to ask I haven't really seen anything what's going to happen with Oregon State and Washington State.
I mean, it's either Mountain West or be independent. And, I don't know.
I just don't see how you're a Power 5 program and not in a conference. I mean, that's just so.
Okay. So, SMU in California, I think it was SMU, they are going to the ACC, which is just so strange. I think it was California and maybe Stanford or one of those schools that's going to the ACC, which is so weird that at least 2 West Coast schools are going to be in an East Coast conference. It makes zero sense.
The realignment has been absurd.
I think, okay, again, what do y'all think of the realignment? I mean, has it done anything good for college football so far, or is it just making things a little bit more stressful?
Yeah, I mean it's all a mess. It's all a giant tangled up spider web right now. I feel like I feel like they're kind of doing too much. A lot of schools kind of start to think the grass is greener, and then they kind of get there and things may not be all that they thought it would be. So yeah, I don't really see the need in all the schools, I guess, to be moving like as far making these big changes that they have been making.
It's so weird. I feel like I don't know if it was a year and a half, 2 years ago. Whenever the speculation started that Texas and Oklahoma wanted to move to the SEC, and then that got announced, and then it seemed like the whole country was moving.
Yeah.
Like, it seemed like once that happened that everybody was just jumping ship, moving play. It's just crazy. I don't know. I'm all for, like, loaded conferences because you want to see best teams play each other. I mean, that is, as someone who likes college football, that is easy. I mean, the SEC is going to be so fun to watch next year. The Big Ten is going to be – I mean, there's – all these conferences are just getting more competitive, but especially with all the people coming in and out. But I don't know. It's confusing to a casual viewer and to someone who just wants stability. It's very weird.
Well, I blame Texas because you
fine.
guys sparked it, but
That's fine.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's just been 2 years really that this has been going on. I mean, now or Texas and Oklahoma, y'all were supposed to join, I think, in 2025 or 26, and then y'all
moved
bumped it up,
Mm-hmm.
which now made it more possible for teams to just make that jump within a year to another conference, which is just so strange, especially since a lot of teams, start working on their scheduling a couple years in, advance. So
It's so weird.
It is weird, but honestly, if you're a Washington State or Oregon State fan, you kind of gotta feel bad for them because they're more than likely not gonna be a Power 5 school at the end of come August.
At least for football, that is.
Yeah, well, I mean, it'll be the same for every sport. I mean, football is the driver when it comes to a lot of this stuff. And now, if they join the Mountain West is a good conference, but they're not Power 5. And I think they would be very competitive because you got UNLV, who's coached by former Razorback defensive coordinator Barry Odom, and they had a great season. Fresno State is always a pretty good team. Nevada, I think, is in it as well. Wyoming, I'm pretty sure. And Boise State's always a good school. So and that's just, of course, hypothetical, but I can't think of anywhere else that they would go.
It's just tough because if you're, like Oregon State, I mean, they were ranked most of the year this year, I want to say, and then you go join a conference like that where it didn't really have any, ranked teams in it. How do you make a push for a college football playoff? Because your strength of schedule, is so weak. I mean, just hate to say it, but like, how do you make a case for yourself? It was easy to see that Oregon State should be ranked with some of the wins they had this year, but if they're just winning those same games next year in that conference, I mean, how do you compare that to another team that maybe has 1 or 2 more losses in the SEC or something like that? And it's tough.
And then a couple of those West Coast states moving or teams moving to the East Coast, that was kind of hard to imagine anyway. And now that brings the possibility of, okay, what if they decided to go to, a conference, along the East Coast? I mean, so you're a college athlete. You know how hard it is traveling just to another, a state over. Imagine how, not all of those teams have, they're a great team bus, you're going to have some I don't want to say obscure, but some sports that don't have quite the funding that basketball or football have, that they're going to be traveling probably by bus or by multiple planes. Basically, if you're California, I don't know, California softball and you got to play Clemson, and then the next weekend you got to play NC State. I mean, it's not fair to those athletes, especially the ones that those programs aren't quite as prosperous as, the larger ones. So I think it was kind of a weird move, but it was either stay Power 5 or don't. There was no other option because now that there's no Pac-12, there's nothing Power 5. past like Colorado, because Colorado joined the Big Ten or Big 12 or something.
Big Ten, I think. I don't know. There's so many teams moving.
I
Like
know.
you said, we could talk about this for hours.
Yeah. So, well, we won't talk anymore. But I know that sort of similar situations were going on in Division II, because Will Pruitt, GAC commissioner that we talked to at Battle of the Ravine, he was talking about how in Division II it's different. It's closer to the FCS model, to where you have a general playoff bracket, and it's based off of like regions and stuff, and how, frankly, and I agree that Harding, Henderson, Ouachita, and even SAU should have been in the playoffs because they were deserving. We had 2 losses. Henderson had 2 losses, and SAU had like just 3. So, and there were a lot of other teams that were in technically stronger conferences that were getting in easily with 1 or 2 losses, and we weren't being considered. And so I don't know. I agree. He says there's some things that could be changed, and now that may be he's biased to his own conference, and rightfully so, because the GAC has had some great teams. But then again, I don't know. Who knows in Division II? I don't think there'll be any immediate changes, but at the very least, all Ouachita fans could say we should be in the playoffs right now. I truly believe that we should be in it. I think Henderson just had our number from the gate, and we just couldn't answer back quickly enough. And, even if we still deserve to be in it despite the loss. So that's just a disgruntled Ouachita fan talking, I think. But anyway, well, I know Thanksgiving is over, but what are y'all most looking forward to for? Quick question. Now, this was a question that the Signal had done, and the Ouachita News Show had asked their audiences previous weeks. When is it now? Is it too early to listen to Christmas music, or is it right on time?
December 1st. I'd say December 1st. Because, you got Christmas time, I guess even if it's like late November, like now, what's the day, the 27th, 28th maybe, but it's still
27th. It's
still not Christmas time. I feel like, because like Christmas, it still gets its whole entire month. Not a lot of other holidays really get that. So, I think by saying you can start listening to Christmas music 4 weeks in advance of Christmas, that's not being hateful or disgruntled towards Christmas. That's not somebody being a Scrooge.
Okay, I'm thinking that Weston, based off your face, you have a different
Me and
answer.
Zach are about to get in a tussle. No, so my family is huge on like Christmas. My birthday's November 4th. My mom hangs up the tree November 5th.
Wow.
We just me and my dad over Thanksgiving break hung up all the lights and everything. I don't know. For me, it's like Christmas. Like everybody loves Christmas and is so happy about Christmas. Like I think Christmas music puts everybody in a good mood. So why not? Obviously, if you're listening to Christmas music in the summertime, you might be a little weird. But if you're, into November or whatever, if it makes you happy, go for it.
Well, it's Christmas in July, so
yeah.
Yeah, that's just a marketing gimmick. But anyway, yeah, okay. So I was kind of along Zach's ideology is December 1st, by all means, go out.
Go crazy.
And frankly, I'm still the type that's like you can still have your Christmas stuff up past New Year's,
Yeah.
As long as it's down before February, then it's okay.
Yeah.
But now we put up our Christmas tree this past weekend, and I started listening to basically that's all that's been
One of us.
Yeah, on all the radio stations, and that's like all I've been listening to, and I was like, dang, this actually has put me in a great mood.
See?
I never sing to the
See?
radio, but I started singing a lot, and so yes, I have definitely gotten a hold of the Christmas spirit. So, any favorite Christmas songs?
How much do y'all think Mariah Carey makes every Christmas?
Oh man,
From December to January.
is she a billionaire yet? She's gotta be. Because even just the memes about this song.
Her whole family is just set for life based on one song.
Yeah.
Crazy.
has she even done anything in the last decade?
I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know. She's a
She has
fantastic
probably
performer.
she probably has the best Christmas song of all time. I mean, numbers wise,
Yeah. Yeah, numbers wise.
Numbers-wise,
I don't know. I don't know. Yeah.
That's a whole different
The
debate.
fact
Maybe
that
for
it's
next
gotten
week's
so
show.
over. Yes.
That could be our question. Best Christmas song.
Okay, that is true. We won't have a lot of other stuff to talk about this next week. I don't. Of course, this coming week is the last week of regular class, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
We won't do an episode during finals week because we got to focus on our test.
So next week will be the last episode.
Yep, next
For
of
the
2023.
semester.
Yep,
For
and then
2023.
we'll resume in 2024, of course. But yeah, so we'll have all of our Christmas questions and topics ready, and yeah, I'm excited for Christmas. I imagine.
Too.
Yep, I know you've been excited for the last month.
Yep.
Been in the Christmas mood, but yeah, no, personally. After Thanksgiving,
It's time.
Yeah. So, all right. Anyway, thank you so much for tuning in to this week's edition of the Roar Rundown Sports Podcast. It was a good, brief hiatus for us, and now we're really getting into the final couple weeks of the semester. So we've really appreciated you tuning in each week, and tune in next week for episode number 14, where we talk a lot about some of our Christmas stuff. So, again, tune in next week. Stay safe. Happy Thanksgiving and happy early Christmas. And go Tigers.